Well, we know today is Friday the 13th, and
Yeah.
we've been conditioned, we've been programmed to see Friday the 13th in a negative way, avoid the black cats and the spooky spiritual dark side of Friday the 13th. But we want to take that back. We want to talk about the positives and talk about how it originated, possibly. Where did this superstition, this idea come that it's a bad thing? So, Carrie, I found this. It said the secret power of Friday the 13th, a 14th century cover up. Friday
Wow.
the 13th is actually good luck, as it's associated with the 13 cycles of the moon in a lunar year. That's why women have 13 cycles in a year and ovulate on the 13th day. In 1487, free thinking and divine female energy was suppressed and labeled witchcraft by Heinrich Kramer, who went
Oh, that
forth to
Heinrich.
burn many healers on the stake due to forced ignorance and a hatred for powerful female leaders.
Hmm.
This is why Friday the 13th is actually a spiritual day of enlightenment, divine feminine energy, and healing that should be sacred instead of hated.
Oh, I hope I didn't hurt anyone's ears there, but oh.
I will balance that with a oh. Okay.
Was that your feminine divine
This
spirit?
is my divine feminine is coming out. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Carrie.
Uh,
Okay. So we want to talk about. We watched a few YouTube shows. Carrie and I talked about this last night and felt, yeah, we need to talk about it because it does relate to Friday the 13th, the Knights Templar, and the demise, supposed demise of the Knights Templar, and how it relates to Friday the 13th. So I found this. The association between the Knights Templar and Friday the 13th stems from their arrest on Friday, October 13th, 1307, by agents of King Philip IV of France. Now, in a nutshell, Knights, I don't know the complete history. I learned a lot last night, and Carrie's going to chime in a little bit here. But to me, back in the 1100s, there were a lot of people from Europe that wanted to make the pilgrimage down to the Holy Land, and they wanted to visit Jerusalem. And often, when they would go down, they would be attacked
mhm.
by the Muslims by the other side, and a lot of them would be brutally
By
killed.
thieves, just by thieves.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and by thieves.
Mhm.
And so there were a group of, impoverished young men. I think it was a group of 9 that decided to take it upon themselves to protect these people coming from Europe to this pilgrimage. And they finally made their way and got support from the king of Jerusalem. His name was King Baldwin II.
Mhm.
And he kind of gave them his blessing, I guess you would say. From there, they grew and they grew and they eventually got support from the church because one of the original Templars had a nephew that was becoming very popular in the religious community, and his name was Bernard, and he would become Saint Bernard. And it was because of him that he was able to get the Templars into good standing with
With
the
the
Pope and with the Catholic Church to become protectors of the Holy Land. However, over the course of 200 years, they gained in strength, in power, in influence, especially in terms of economics, Carrie.
Mhm. And that's where the struggle began.
And that's
So,
where this, yeah.
yeah, let's go back a little bit because when the Knights Templar first began, they were known as the poor, soldiers. They used to have to beg and plead for funding because they were so poor, and and as they grew, they started to get the support, and like you said, the king actually supported them. What they did was they started the bank, the first bank. They were the ones that started the checking system. I always thought the Knights Templar were very, very good. They were the good souls. You know how history has been rewritten over and over again. It's always written by those that conquer. The victors always rewrite history and make, you know, the other side terrible villains. And that, I believe, was the case with the Knights Templar, because now even Freemasonry, you know, I know that a lot of people don't like Freemasonry, but I know a couple of people in the Freemasons, and I know we're going to get some flack about this, but some are good. Okay. I think there was a division of the Freemasons. I think initially they were good, like the Knights Templar. They actually worked together. But I believe that there was a division where it went very dark. You know, the Freemasons, many of them went very dark, but there's still a very good component. And I met some in Portugal. So having said all that, I think that the history of the Knights Templar is not what we have known it to be. You know, we hear so many nasty things about them, that they were doing, you know, evil and vile things, you know, especially in that time where homosexuality would have been illegal. You know, there were rumors about that kind of stuff. And so they were all rounded up, and they were tortured and eventually burned at the stake. Now, the Grand Master, his name was Jacques de Molay. And Jacques de Molay, he was the one that, let's see, Friday the 13th, October 13th, 1307, he was the Grand Master, and he was the one that cursed King Philip along with Pope Clement. Now, I was really surprised to find out. I always thought that it was on Friday the 13th that Jacques was being burned at the stake, but no, it was actually March 18th, 1314. And he was 70 years old at the time. This is an old man, right? But he was actually very, very powerful, and he was the Grand Master. So on his, you know, last moments, he actually stated to the public, where is it now? I've got it here. It was really good. Okay. So his last and dying words, this is Jacques de Molay, okay, Grand Master. He said he's accused of sodomy and all kinds of stuff, right? And at that time, the church was really trying to vilify them. And so he said, to say that which is untrue is a crime both in the sight of God and man, and not one of us, meaning not one of the Knights Templar, has betrayed his God or his country. These were people that were devout to Christ, to Jesus, and to the royal families, to you know, the good royal families, and you know, to integrity. So when I was 13 years old, I started having dreams when I was about 3 about being Anne Boleyn in a previous life. And many of you know my history with this. So I truly believe that I was Anne Boleyn in a previous life. I have many memories of it. When I was 13 years old, yeah. So this is Greg Hallett's book that I published for him. And the image, it's a bit flared there. There we go. So the image, I created that with AI, and I did the whole cover. And I asked AI, please show me what Anne Boleyn would have looked like at the time that she was born, or she was alive at the height of her power. Anyways, this is what came up. And when I put my daughter's face right beside this image, it was a spitting image. It was shocking. It was like, wow, that's pretty amazing, right? And so anyways, Anne Boleyn, there is a link with the Knights Templar because she wasn't actually beheaded and she was smuggled out. I saw this in a past life regression that I actually was smuggled out. It was my birthday. And King Henry was actually my best friend. He didn't want to kill me, but I couldn't give any more heirs to the throne because I had had so many miscarriages and so many abortions, right, prior to meeting him. And a lot of miscarriages after meeting him. And so I just couldn't do it anymore. And rather than killing me, we faked my death on my birthday, and the Knights Templar smuggled me out. So I was forever grateful to them. Fast forward to this lifetime, I'm 13 years old and I'm in Europe with my mom. And Green Eyes, you said that today of all days, Friday the 13th, you went to Temple Church in London, where the effigies of the Knights Templar are all laid to rest. So that was where I went when I was 13, and they didn't have those partitions around them at the time. All the effigies were just open. So I'm a little kid. I looked like I was about 8 or 9 at 13 because I hadn't developed. I was underdeveloped, and I would kneel beside each one, and tears were coming to me, and I was so grateful to each one because I had a memory that they had helped me. I couldn't remember quite what it was, but I knew that they had helped me in a previous life and they saved my life. And these were men of honor. It's going to make me choke up. And so, anyways, my mom, she was really a good soul. I loved my mom. And she would be like, "Oh, Carrie, get up. You're embarrassing me." Like, for God's sakes, man, get up. And because I kept kneeling and hugging these effigies, you could actually touch them. And I put my hand on their chest and on their hands. Their hands were here with their swords. And I would put my hand on their hands and just say thank you. And so fast forward, end up meeting Greg Hallett. Well, first of all, I find the cave in Portugal. That's linked to the Knights Templar, whole nother story that we'll go into another time. Same with Greg Hallett. And then we move forward. We're going through all these cathedrals, Greg and I, and we're deciphering the prophecies. So then we come to Roslin Chapel. Now, this is like the creme de la creme part of the Knights Templar.
I've got some pictures here, Carrie. So maybe I'll go through the pictures that you gave me, and or do you just want to tell the story first?
Nope, go ahead. You
Okay.
start showing the pictures. And
before we get to the pictures, again, one thing about the Knights Templars, one reason why they were eventually taken down, a lot of them, was because of their power and influence economically, right? With the power they had over the wealth, and they were basically Carry the first banking system, really, weren't they?
Yeah, they had checks. So as you were talking about, sorry to interrupt, but as you were talking earlier about how, the people would travel across France, for instance, and they would have to carry all of their life savings with them. They couldn't leave it back home. And the thieves knew that whoever's coming along has got a wad of coins. And so the Knights Templar thought, no, we've got to change this. So they started giving out parchment papers. And you could go to a Knights Templar house, a castle, and you could deposit your life savings in their care. They would give the parchment paper that would tell you how much is in your life savings, how much is in the Knights Templar house, say in I don't know, Lisbon, right? And then you're traveling up and into France and you're going to the Bordeaux region. And as you stop in the Bordeaux region, you can actually show your parchment paper with the signature from the Knights Templar, and they would then grant you the coins, whatever you would like to withdraw. You would then, it was a debit credit system. They were the first ones to ever create it. And that was not liked by the king, because the people had the power. The people were able to take care of their finances without fear, without worry, right? And the Pope didn't like this because, all of a sudden, these beautiful men that were being vilified by the church, right, were now coming into a position of power. There's a whole story about the church as well, because initially they were, I want to say demonized, but there was a division within the church because they believed that either you prayed and you were a good Christian or Catholic, or you were a warrior. You couldn't be both, like the Templars were. and they thought that it was a contradiction to be both. That's where Saint Bernard. You actually brought that one up. I was like, oh my God, Saint Bernard. That's awesome. That's where Saint Bernard came into play, because he was the one that actually wrote the letter to the church and to the king, and basically said these people are amazing. They are heavenly, heaven sent, because they are not only warriors in protecting the people, but they are good souls as well. And it was that writing that changed everything for a while, anyways, for the Knights Templar. You there, Glenn?
Yes, I just found it like fascinating that first banking system where someone going down to the Holy Land would go to a Knights Templar house and would give all his wealth to that Knight Templar. And then as they were making their way down to the Holy Land, there were all these other Knights Templar houses along the way. And if they needed some cash, they would just go into that house, show them the documents, like you said, and then they would receive some of their money back.
Yeah. So they weren't the villains that we have been led to believe. It was more programming. Would you agree?
Yeah. I would agree. And I think the last point I want to make before we show the pictures is one of the reasons why the church in coordination with royalty took down the Knights Templar is because not so much that they were overly powerful, but because they were so in debt. Because the King of France that did help take down the Templars, he had borrowed lots of wealth, lots of gold to fight his wars. He was so far in debt to the Templars that he believed the only way he was going to get out of this debt was to execute them. And the Templars had influence, they had wealth, but one thing they didn't have is power over the country. They didn't have rulership. And because they didn't have that rulership, the Pope, in coordination with the king, were able to round them up and execute many of them.
Right. And so it was, what day was it that he was executed? It was, oh my goodness, I had it here. March 18th, 1314. Yeah, was the day that he was burned at the stake. Jacques de Malay. He was actually burned at the stake. And so when he was being burned at the stake, he cursed both the king and Pope Clement. And within the year, both were dead. So that's where they said Friday the 13th came from. But I think it's interesting because they were rounded up on Friday the 13th, but the actual day that Jacques was burned at the stake was not Friday the 13th. So again, it's programming. They're trying to get you associated with a certain day with, witchcraft. Didn't happen.
Okay, let's get into some of these photos here.
Yeah, so this is, this is the Temple Church in London, and it's incredible. During World War II, the tower itself was bombed out, so the roof was gone on both the church and the tower, the circular tower, and that tower is where the effigies are. It's really amazing. Have you got the next one? We can go through them quick, huh? Okay, yeah, so that's an actual picture from World War II, where the tower in kind of the top right-hand side beside the church, yeah, just in front of it. The tower's completely, it's gone. But the effigies actually remained. They were not damaged so much. So this is a doorway that normally is closed, and I was able to sneak a picture of it. And it actually has a bathroom there. Now, normally public aren't allowed to use the bathroom there, but I was able to. I don't know why, but the woman was like, yeah, sure, you know what, come on in here. So I got to see all the way in behind the scenes. This is one of the Knights Templar, like I said, sword in hand. These are effigies. Supposedly they're not buried there anymore. They've been removed, but I don't know about that. I don't know. Feels like they could still be there. Their spirit sure is there. And see the railing that goes around? When I was 13 years old, there was no railing there. So I could go up and kneel beside each and every one of them, which I did. and it was beautiful. It was yeah, it was a really beautiful experience, saying thank you to them again. So this is a font, the circular bowl, and if you can go close up on that one, I don't know if you can do the close up. Um, I have my journal here, which is okay. So I wrote. This is my journal of all the really spiritual woo-woo stuff that's happened, and so right. When I was at Rosalind Chapel, which is the Roseline Chapel, they all the cathedrals, all the churches have like this beautiful bowl, and it looks like you would, have holy water in it. But if you look close up, if you can take me out and do a close up on that, you can see that I think this one has a lamb carved into it, and there's usually a lion, an eagle, an angel, and a bull, right? And so yeah, that was probably the lion that we're seeing there. Yeah, could be the angel. I have to get my glasses on. Anyways, so the lion is Mark, the eagle is John, the angel is Matthew, and the bull is Luke, depicted as Luke in the Bible. And the woman that was at Rosalind Chapel showed me the exterior and showed me that. I said, you don't have a font here that has the four, the world card, right? When you look at the world card, there's always an angel, a bull, a lion, and an eagle. And you go into any church, I dare you, go into any church and you'll find a font there, especially in England, and it always has those four symbols on it. So I just wanted to pull it up again and show you that that in Temple Church, there it is. There's the font, and it's got the four symbols carved into it. So don't you think it's odd? It's a long way to travel by car. It's 5 hours. So can you imagine if you had been on horseback, it would take days and days and days and days. How is it that every church across Scotland, across England, all have the same symbols, the four symbols, right? It's amazing to me. Yeah. And so this was beautiful. This is Sintra. And so this is just outside of Lisbon. I went up there myself. This is my photo that I took, actually. And it's a staircase that goes down, 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 down. This was the initiation palace that the Templars used initially. And now they're saying, no, it wasn't. It never happened. Baloney. You can actually feel them there. You can feel the ghosts of the Templar as you're walking through this. It's amazing. And you get down and it's like a grotto, there's like lower ceilings and the water, and it's really beautiful. It's magical. So this was all part of the Templar magic, right? Speaking of magic, okay, so we're watching this video last night, and it was of a Grand Master, a current day Grand Master Templar. And he was talking about the ganglia. It's a group of nerves that are in the back of your neck. This is the back of my neck. So just before the end of the Mayan calendar, I woke up. It was May and 2012, right? 2012. And I woke up with bruises. Some family members also had bruises. And so I put my hair up in a bun, and one of the family members came up and went, "Oh my God, what's that in the back of your neck?" And they took a picture. So in the video last night, they were talking about how, it's the nervous system, and often things will be hooked up to you. And it's just like in the Matrix. Remember the tube that goes in and it's got those things that it's like little points? It's hard to see in the picture here, but if you look at it in life, you can actually see little dots that go all the way around that scoop mark. And so it like calmed on, and then the center went in, and I was hooked up to something. And I've had lots of abductions, ET abductions throughout my lifetime. And that one was probably the strongest evidence of a scoop mark that I've ever had. Yeah. You could actually put your finger deep into it. And so this goes back to the Knights Templar, because that's what the Grand Master was talking about, was that we have this group of ganglia, in the back of the neck. And it is where there was a ritual that
Initiation, yeah. Sorry to interrupt
yeah,
you, but the initiation where to be initiated as a Knight Templar, you'd have to go and kiss the back of the neck to activate this, what you're talking about here.
yeah,
So
yeah. And so I went, oh my God, I have a picture for you guys. And so I pulled this out. In their initiation, they kiss that point because they know that you have all of your nerve endings are in your lips, right? There's a meridian that travels around your body from above your lip all the way around to the bottom of the lip, and it comes together. And that's why mothers, we know intuitively, we can kiss it better, right? There's power in that kiss. Well, when you kiss the back of the neck, my husband often kisses my neck when I'm doing dishes, and it's like, just because it activates you, right? It activates everything in you. So that was pretty cool watching that last night about the Knights Templar.
okay, and we've got one more picture here before we move on to our last segment. And let me just get it back up on screen. That is this one here, a very mystical, magical picture.
Okay. So my husband said, I'm going to treat you. I'm taking you away. And I was like, really? Where are we going? Because we didn't have the budget, right? Where are we going? And he goes, I'm taking you to Rosslyn Chapel. And I was like, yeah. I didn't realize it was a 5.5 hour drive each way, right? And so we drove up to Scotland from
What year was this, Carrie? Sorry, what year?
this year. This is oh gosh, this would have been March, I want to say. May, June. Yeah, it would have been probably March this year, actually. April 6th. It was April 6th. I've got it in the book. That's right. So that was April 6th. Now, I'm in Rosslyn Chapel. And as soon as I arrived, I met, I know them all by name now. And I met one of the curators there. And I said, I'm looking for a spiritual place. I'm friends with Greg Hallett and with someone else named the name. And he was like, oh, they were here not long ago. And I said, I know. And he goes, oh, well, this is really exciting, right? So he said, go to the corner and you'll notice that the stone is worn because over the centuries, so many people have sat in this exact spot. Well, the night before I came here, I heard spirits say, when you get there, you need to take your shoes off and you have to remove your shoes. So wear shoes that you can slip off. And I was like, I'm not going to take my shoes off in a public place, clucking my tongue. Gosh, spirit, you ask weird things of me sometimes. So anyways, I get there and I'm hearing, take your shoes off, take your shoes off, take your shoes off, take your shoes off, please. So finally I slip off. They were cowboy boots. I slipped them off. Of course they're cowboy boots. I'm Canadian, Albertan. So I put them to the side, right up against the wall. And I'm sitting there barefoot. And in this picture, you can't see it, but in the life one, you can actually see my little toes. And so I started to meditate and boom, this column of light came through. A man came forward. And as the light came in, it went up through me. And all of a sudden it went through the entire ceiling all the way to the center that had kind of a point. And through that point, the light came down through and went downstairs, lit up the next floor downstairs. There were 2 layers and it was beautiful light. This man came forward and offered his hand. I held his hand. We went into the stars, came back. And there were so many things that happened, so many blessings. But my husband was there, and you're not supposed to take pictures, okay? But he didn't know that. And he could sense something was going on there. And so he took a photo. Well, right behind me, there's no window. There is no window for that light to come in. This is a north-facing wall. And the sun, it was midday, so the sun is actually to the right of this photo and it's way over, and it would have been coming in from the right and coming down on the opposite angle. So I showed this to some people. There is, I can't name the name, but I showed it to some people and they looked at it and they went, ah, you had someone that was there of presence, and they were blessing you. They were showing us that, you know, this is a time. It was the activation, and we activated, you know, we lit up Rosslyn Chapel. So what I saw was, it was like an ivy that went through the ceiling, but I realized it was like a vine. And then I went, no, it's the veins. It's the veins of the body of the church. Wow. It lit up like beautiful golden light. I watched the whole ceiling light up. It was magnificent. And then a whole bunch of things happened after that I can't talk about yet, but I will. And this is a whole, I mean, it's a movie, what we've been through. So this is why I want to bring people to Scotland, to go on the tour of Peterborough Cathedral and then up to Rosslyn Chapel. And I don't know if Greg will be able to join us or not. We'll put extend an invitation out to him and see if he can join us. Either way, it's an incredible adventure, and that I've been blessed to be on. And the picture doesn't even look like me. I transformed. I like, there, it's not even me. It doesn't look like me, but that was me. And man, the light, it just lit right up. I think also the picture is a bit elongated, so I look wider in the picture. You know, my head looks really wide, but if it comes back to its natural size, it still doesn't look like me. It's a different energy. Yeah, but it's beautiful.
I left this world with tears in my eyes, but heaven held me in the softest light. Angels gathered round, no need to speak. They knew the weight I carried, the soul beneath. I saw my life like 1,000 flames, burning through the years I tried to blame. But in that silence I found grace, and every broken moment fell into place. And I remember me, not who I was, but who I came to be. Through the dark, through the storm, I finally could see that love never leaves and pain doesn't know. The heart that chooses to come back home. I faced the fire, I walked the sea. And now I stand in truth, I remember me. There was a man with eyes like gold. He showed me things I'd never been told. Said your time's not done, you've more to give. It's not just about surviving, it's learning how to live. I fell to earth with open hands, stronger now than I'd ever planned. With every scar I found my voice. Forgiveness turned my pain into a choice. And I remember me, not who I was, but who I came to be. Through the dark, through the storm, I finally could see that love never leaves and pain doesn't know. The heart that chooses to come back home. I faced the fire, walked the sea. And now I stand in truth, I remember me.